What happens when a secret I thought was buried gets exposed in front of everyone I know? How could one video ruin my life and make my husband turn against me in the most unexpected legal way? Can I really call it a misunderstanding when the evidence says otherwise and the divorce papers are already in my hands? I'm Ivadne Hartley, 32 years old, and I work as a mid-level marketing specialist at Patterson and Associates. Until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had everything under control. My husband Caleb, a quiet secondary school teacher, seemed content with our routine life. Sure, things had gotten a bit stale after 8 years of marriage, but that's normal, right? That's what my mother Roxana always said. You're married, not buried, honey. Live a little. So I did. I lived a little with Jasper Linwood, Caleb's old college friend, who tended bar at the Blue Moon downtown. It started innocently enough, just conversations when Caleb and I would grab drinks there. Jasper was everything Caleb wasn't: spontaneous, charming, always ready with a joke or an adventure. When he suggested a weekend trip to the mountains just as friends, I convinced myself it was harmless. Caleb was busy grading papers anyway. That weekend changed everything. Though I didn't realize it at the time, Jasper filmed everything: our hikes, our dinners, our laughter, and yes, our kisses. But it was just fun, just a moment of feeling alive again. Nothing serious, nothing that would hurt anyone if they never found out. I was so wrong. Chapter 1. The Party Revelation. The party at Jasper's apartment on that Friday night in October seemed like any other social gathering. The living room buzzed with conversations, laughter, and the clink of beer bottles. I'd convinced Caleb to come, though he stood awkwardly by the kitchen counter, nursing the same beer for an hour. Come on, Cal, loosen up, I said, sliding up to him with my third glass of wine. You look like you're at a faculty meeting. He gave me that look, the one that said he'd rather be home grading essays or reading one of his history books. I'm fine, Ivadne, just not really my crowd. They're your friends too, I insisted, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true anymore. Most of the people here were Jasper's friends, younger bartenders and servers from various downtown establishments. They laughed louder, drank more, and lived without the constant weight of responsibility that seemed to press down on Caleb's shoulders. Jasper appeared beside us, his arm casually draping around my waist in what he'd call a friendly gesture. Hey there, you two. Ivadne, you need a refill. Caleb, man, you look like someone died. I laughed, perhaps a bit too loudly. That's what I keep telling him. He takes everything so seriously. Caleb's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. To anyone else, he looked the same, but I'd been married to him long enough to recognize the signs. Maybe we should head home soon, he said quietly. All ready. The night's just getting started. I turned to the room, raising my glass. Right, everyone. Caleb wants to leave, but we're just getting warmed up. A few people cheered, and someone turned up the music. Lynn, Caleb's older sister, who'd stopped by after her shift at the hospital, caught my eye from across the room. She shook her head slightly, a warning I chose to ignore. Ivadne, she said, approaching us with concern written across her face. Maybe you should... Should what? Have fun? Enjoy myself? I interrupted. God, you Hartleys are all the same, so serious about everything. The party continued around us, but I noticed Caleb had gone quiet in that particular way of his. Not angry quiet, but thinking quiet. That should have worried me more than it did. Around midnight, when most people were sufficiently drunk and the conversation had devolved into storytelling about embarrassing moments and wild adventures, Jasper stood up on his coffee table. Hey everyone, I've got something hilarious to show you guys. He pulled out his phone, grinning with that mischievous smile that had gotten me into trouble before. Remember that weekend trip to the mountains last month? I got some great footage. My stomach dropped. The wine in my glass suddenly tasted like acid. Jasper, I said quickly, trying to keep my voice light, nobody wants to see your boring hiking videos. Oh, trust me, this isn't boring. He was already connecting his phone to the TV, his fingers moving across the screen with practiced ease. You guys are going to love this. I glanced at Caleb, who was watching the TV screen with an expression I couldn't read. Lynn had moved closer, her nurse's instincts probably picking up on the tension that was suddenly thick in the air. The first frames appeared on the screen, a beautiful mountain vista, then Jasper's face grinning at the camera. Day 1 of our adventure, his recorded voice announced, and look who decided to join me for some real fun. The camera panned, and there I was, laughing and spinning in a meadow, my hair catching the sunlight. It looked innocent enough, just two friends enjoying nature. But I knew what came next. I knew what Jasper had captured later that evening, after we'd shared a bottle of wine by the campfire, and I'd convinced myself that what Caleb didn't know wouldn't hurt him. Turn it off, I said, but my voice was barely a whisper. What was that? Jasper asked, his thumb hovering over the play button. I said nobody wants to see this. It's late. People want to go home. But the room had gone quiet, everyone's attention focused on the screen. Someone called out, Play it, Jazz. Let's see Ivadne's wild side. And he did. Chapter 2. The video goes public. The video played, and with each passing second, my carefully constructed world began to crumble. What started as innocent hiking footage quickly became something else entirely. There I was, feeding Jasper strawberries by the campfire. There we were, sharing a sleeping bag, because it was cold. And then, the moment I'd been dreading, Jasper's phone, capturing us in a kiss that lasted far too long to be explained away as friendly. The room fell silent except for the audio from the video. My own voice, slightly drunk and carefree, saying, Caleb never kisses me like that anymore. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor, and never face the dozen pairs of eyes that were now looking between me, the screen, and my husband. But instead, I did what I always did when cornered. I laughed. Oh my God, Jasper, you're such a creep for filming that, I said, forcing brightness into my voice. We were so drunk that weekend. You know how it is on group trips. Everyone gets a little crazy. But it wasn't a group trip, and everyone in the room knew it. The video clearly showed just the two of us, alone in the wilderness, acting like anything but friends. I glanced at Caleb, expecting anger, shouting, some kind of dramatic reaction. Instead, he was perfectly still, his face pale but composed. He set his beer down on the counter with deliberate care and walked toward the door. Cal, wait, I called after him, but he didn't turn around. Let him go, Jasper said, finally turning off the video. He'll get over it. It's not like we killed anyone. The party tried to resume, but the energy had shifted. People whispered in small groups, and I caught fragments of conversations. Did you see his face? I can't believe she... Poor Caleb. Lynn approached me, her expression a mixture of disappointment and concern. Ivadne, what have you done? Nothing, I said automatically. It was just a stupid moment. Caleb's overreacting as usual. He's so uptight about everything. He's your husband. And I'm allowed to have friends. I'm allowed to have fun. Just because I married him doesn't mean I'm dead. Lynn stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. I need to go check on my brother. She left without another word, and several other people followed her out. I stayed at the party for another hour, determined to prove that I wasn't bothered by Caleb's dramatic exit. I posted a photo on Instagram, me and Jasper with our arms around each other, both of us laughing, with the caption, When life gives you serious people, find someone who knows how to have fun. Hashtag living my best life. Hashtag no regrets. The likes and comments started coming in immediately. Most were supportive, friends who didn't know the full context, telling me I looked happy and radiant. But there were others, people who'd been at the party or heard about it, whose comments were less kind. I deleted the negative ones and blocked the users. Problem solved. When I finally got home around 2 a.m, I expected to find Caleb waiting up for me, ready for the fight I'd been avoiding all evening. Instead, the house was quiet. His side of the bed was made with hospital corners, something he only did when he was extremely upset or stressed. I found him in the guest room, lying on his back and staring at the ceiling. "Really, Cal? You're going to sleep in here because of one stupid video?" He didn't look at me. "I think you should know that my phone's been buzzing all night. Screenshots of your Instagram post, messages from people who were at the party. My sister's been calling." "So? Let them talk. People love drama, but they'll forget about it in a week." "Will they?" Something in his voice made me pause. He sounded different, not angry, not hurt, but something else, something colder. "Come to bed," I said. "We can talk about this tomorrow when you're not being so dramatic." He finally looked at me then, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger or sadness, but a kind of distant calculation. "I'll be sleeping in here for a while," he said simply. I wanted to argue, to force the confrontation that would let me explain and justify and make him understand that he was overreacting. But something about his tone warned me off. The next morning, I woke up alone. Caleb's side of the bed was still made, and when I went to look for him, I found the guest room empty too. There was a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone for a run. Coffee's made." But it was what I found on the dresser that really caught my attention. A small silver key I didn't recognize, sitting next to his wedding ring. Chapter 3. The fallout spreads. By Monday morning, I realized the party incident wasn't going to blow over as quickly as I'd hoped. I walked into Patterson and Associates with my usual confidence, but I could feel eyes following me. Conversation stopped when I passed. My assistant, Maria, avoided eye contact when she handed me my messages. "Good morning, sunshine," I said to the office in general, determined to act normal. "Hope everyone had a good weekend." A few people mumbled responses, but the usual Monday morning energy was definitely off. It wasn't until my boss, Patricia Patterson herself, called me into her office around 10 that I understood the scope of the problem. "Ivadne, please sit down." Patricia was a woman in her 50s who'd built the agency from nothing and had zero tolerance for anything that might damage the company's reputation. "I need to discuss something with you." "Of course. What's up?" She turned her computer screen toward me, and there was my Instagram post from Friday night, the one with me and Jasper. But it wasn't just the post, it was the comments section, which had exploded over the weekend, with people I didn't even know weighing in on my marriage, my character, and my professionalism. "One of our clients saw this," Patricia said. "The Hendersons. They're concerned about having someone representing their family business who displays such questionable judgment on social media." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. That's completely unfair. What I do in my personal time has nothing to do with my work performance. Doesn't it? You're tagged as working here in your profile. When you post something like this, you're representing our company whether you intend to or not. It's just a photo with a friend. If that's grounds for workplace discrimination, then maybe we need to examine the double standards here. Would you be having this conversation if I were a man? Patricia's expression didn't change. If you were a man who posted a photo celebrating infidelity while representing our clients, yes, we'd absolutely be having this conversation. The word infidelity hung in the air between us. I wanted to deny it, to explain that it wasn't that simple, but the video from the party had made denial impossible. "I'm not asking you to quit," Patricia continued, "but I am asking you to consider how your personal choices might affect your professional reputation, and I'm requiring you to take down that post." I left her office feeling humiliated and angry. This was exactly the kind of thing Caleb would do, turn a private matter into a public judgment about my character. I was sure he'd somehow orchestrated this, maybe even contacted the Hendersons himself. When I got home that evening, I found Caleb in his study, surrounded by papers and files. His laptop was open, and I could see what looked like a spreadsheet on the screen. "What are you working on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He minimized the screen quickly. School stuff. But I'd seen enough to know it wasn't school stuff. I'd caught glimpses of dates, times, and what looked like screenshots of social media posts. My posts. Cal, we need to talk about what happened at the party. Do we? Yes. You're acting like I committed some terrible crime, but it was just a moment of fun. One kiss. It didn't mean anything. He turned in his chair to face me, and again I saw that strange, distant look in his eyes. One kiss? You know what I mean. It was nothing serious. Jasper and I are friends. We got carried away for a minute, but it's not like we're having some torrid affair. Aren't you? The question caught me off guard. What? I asked if you were having an affair with Jasper. I could have told the truth then. I could have explained about the weekend trip, about how lonely I'd been feeling, about how Caleb had become so distant and routine that I'd forgotten what it felt like to feel desired. But instead, I got defensive. I can't believe you'd even ask me that. After 8 years of marriage, you think I'd throw it all away for a bartender. I think you'd convince yourself that whatever you're doing is justified because you're not happy with our marriage. His insight was uncomfortably accurate, which made me angrier. So now you're a psychologist? You think you know what I'm thinking? I think I know you better than you think I do. I looked at his laptop screen, still minimized, but clearly containing something he didn't want me to see. What's on your computer, Caleb? Nothing that concerns you. Everything about our marriage concerns me. He was quiet for a long moment, then opened the laptop screen. The spreadsheet was back, and I could see it clearly now. Dates, times, locations, and screenshots. My Instagram posts, my Facebook check-ins, my Twitter updates, all organized chronologically, going back months. What the hell is this? It's a record, he said simply. A record of what? Your activities, your posts, your friendships. I stared at the screen, seeing my own life laid out in clinical detail. The weekend I'd told him I was going to a spa with my college roommate, but had actually gone to the mountains with Jasper. The evening I'd said I was working late but had checked in at the Blue Moon. The dozens of photos with Jasper that I'd posted over the past 6 months, each one showing us growing closer and more intimate. You've been spying on me. I've been paying attention. There's a difference. This is insane, Caleb. You're tracking me like I'm some kind of criminal. I'm documenting behavior. There's a legal distinction. The word legal sent a chill down my spine. Legal? What are you talking about? But he'd already closed the laptop and was gathering his papers. I'm keeping records, he said. That's all you need to know for now. He left the room, and I stood there staring at the closed laptop, my mind racing. On his desk, I noticed 3 manila folders labeled in his neat handwriting: personal, home, and legal. The legal folder was the thickest. Chapter 4. Public Confrontation at Family Lunch. Sunday lunch at the Hartley family home had been a tradition for as long as I'd known Caleb. His parents, Eleanor and Richard, hosted every week, and usually Lynn would come with whatever boyfriend she was dating at the time. It was typically a pleasant, if somewhat boring affair. Eleanor's pot roast, Richard's questions about work, Lynn's stories from the hospital. This Sunday was different from the moment we walked in the door. Eleanor greeted us with her usual warmth, but I noticed she didn't quite meet my eyes. Richard nodded politely, but didn't engage in his usual small talk about my job. Lynn was already there, sitting at the dining room table with her arms crossed. "How's everyone doing?" I asked brightly, determined to act as if nothing had changed. "We're fine," Eleanor said, bustling around the kitchen. "How are you two?" "Great," I said. At the same time, Caleb said, "We're managing." Lunch was served with an undercurrent of tension I couldn't quite identify. The conversation was stilted, focused on safe topics like the weather and Eleanor's garden. But I could feel something building, like the pressure before a storm. It was Richard who finally brought up the elephant in the room. "Ivadne," he said, setting down his fork with deliberate precision. "We need to discuss what happened at that party." My stomach clenched. "What about it?" "Don't play dumb," Lynn interjected. "The whole family has seen that video. Mum's church friends are talking about it. Dad's colleagues at the bank are asking questions." "That's not my problem," I said, my defensive instincts kicking in. "I can't control what people say or think." "But you can control what you do," Richard said quietly. "And what you did was humiliate my son in front of his friends." "I didn't humiliate anyone. Caleb chose to be embarrassed by something that was completely innocent." "Innocent?" Lynn's voice rose. "You were kissing another man. On camera. How is that innocent?" "It was one kiss, one moment. People are acting like I burned down the church." Eleanor tried to intervene. "Maybe we should all just—" "No, Mom," Lynn said firmly. "Someone needs to say this. Ivadne, you cheated on Caleb. You went away for a weekend with another man. You kissed him. God knows what else you did. And then you had the nerve to post about it on social media, like you're proud of it." "I didn't post about the kiss. I posted about having fun with a friend." "The same friend you've been sneaking around with for months," Richard added. "Yes, we've all seen your social media. The pattern is pretty clear." I looked around the table, seeing judgment in every face except Eleanor's, who just looked sad. "So this is what we're doing now? A family intervention because I have a friendship that makes Caleb uncomfortable." "This isn't about friendship," Lynn said. "This is about respect. This is about honor. This is about the vows you made in this very house 8 years ago." "And this is about consequences," Richard added, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd spent 30 years as a bank president. "Actions have consequences, Ivadne. You can't just do whatever you want and expect everyone else to pretend it's normal." I felt cornered, attacked from all sides. My mother would never have allowed this kind of gang up. Roxana would have told them all to mind their own business and reminded them that marriage wasn't a prison sentence. "You know what?" I said, standing up from the table. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Caleb is a grown man. If he has a problem with me, he can discuss it with me privately. He doesn't need his whole family fighting his battles for him." "He tried to discuss it with you privately," Lynn shot back. "You dismissed him, gaslit him, and then posted more photos with your boyfriend." "He's not my boyfriend." "Then what is he?" Richard asked. The question hung in the air. What was Jasper to me? A friend? A lover? A escape from the monotony of my marriage? A mistake? All of those things and none of them. "He's someone who makes me feel alive," I said finally. "Something I haven't felt in this family for a very long time." The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor's face crumpled slightly, and Richard's jaw tightened. Lynn shook her head in disgust, but it was Caleb's reaction that surprised me most. He simply nodded, as if I'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being honest." After lunch, as we drove home in silence, I tried to process what had happened. I'd expected Caleb to defend me, or at least to be angry with his family for ganging up on me. Instead, he seemed almost relieved. "You're not going to say anything?" I asked as we pulled into our driveway. "What would you like me to say?" "That your family was out of line, that they had no right to attack me like that." "Were they wrong, though?" I stared at the open folders like they were live grenades. The one labeled Timeline had color-coded sticky notes marching down the edge, blue for my excuses, yellow for Jasper's messages, red for the nights I'd claimed late meetings or girls' nights that never happened. Another folder, thicker, held bank statements with highlighted transfers. Small amounts at first, coffee here, lunch there, then larger ones labeled vaguely as gifts or miscellaneous. The third was simply marked communications, screenshots, call logs, geotagged photos I hadn't even known he could access. "You've been spying on me," I said, voice thinner than I intended. "I've been paying attention," Caleb corrected without looking up. He clicked print again. The machine whirred, spitting out another thread of Jasper's late-night voice notes. "There's a difference." I crossed my arms, trying to reclaim some moral high ground. You could have just asked me. I did, multiple times. He finally met my eyes. You lied, every single time, so I stopped asking and started collecting. The room felt smaller, the air heavier with printer ink and unspoken ultimatums. Outside, the street lamp flickered on, throwing long shadows across the bookshelves. I recognized the silence. It was the same one that used to settle between us after small arguments about whose turn it was to unload the dishwasher. Only now it wasn't small, and neither of us was going to apologize. I took another step forward, close enough to smell the faint citrus of his aftershave, the same one I'd bought him for our 5th anniversary. It felt like a betrayal all over again, that he still wore it. So this is your new hobby? Playing detective instead of talking to your wife? He set the printed page down with precision, aligning its edges with the others. Talking stopped working when the answers became fiction. He gestured at the desk without flourish. This is non-fiction, undeniable. I needed something solid when everything else turned to smoke. My throat tightened. You make it sound like I'm the villain in some courtroom drama. Aren't you? The question came out soft, almost curious. You chose the script. You cast Jasper. You directed the scenes. I was just the audience that didn't realize it was a tragedy until the curtain started falling. I flinched. The word tragedy landed like a slap. Too dramatic, too final. It wasn't like that. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Affairs rarely announce themselves with fanfare. He picked up a screenshot, one I remembered sending at 2:17 a.m. after a work emergency that had really been Jasper's hotel room. Caleb's thumb brushed over my typed words. Wish you were here right now. They start with small permissions we give ourselves. A late text becomes 2. A drink becomes dinner. Dinner becomes everything else. Each step felt harmless until the trail led here. I wanted to argue that he'd let the distance grow first, that his long hours grading papers, his quiet evenings with books instead of me, had left space for someone else to step in. But the defense felt flimsy now, like wet paper. He'd documented my absences. I had no corresponding ledger of his neglect to wave in return. What happens if I tell Jasper it's over tonight? I asked, testing the water. Caleb's gaze didn't waver. Then you do it in front of me. Screen shared call, no deletions, no coded goodbyes. And you hand me your phone afterward, passcode changed to something I know, location sharing enabled, full access until I say otherwise. The demand should have enraged me. Instead, it left me hollow. You don't trust me at all anymore. Trust isn't a feeling you can flip back on like a light switch. He closed the communications folder, the sound crisp in the quiet room. It's earned through consistent behavior over time. You spent months teaching me the opposite lesson. Now we're in the remedial course. I looked around the study, at the framed photo of us on the Amalfi Coast, smiling like people who believed forever was a guarantee. The glass was smudged with fingerprints, his probably from nights he'd sat here alone staring at it. Do you still love me? The question slipped out before I could stop it, raw and childlike. He exhaled slowly, as though the answer required recalculating gravity. I love who we used to be. I love the memory of the woman who laughed at my terrible puns and held my hand during thunderstorms. I don't know if that woman still exists, or if she's been rewritten by months of secrets. He paused. But I haven't filed anything yet. That should tell you something. It told me he was still deciding whether to bury the body or try CPR. The uncertainty was worse than a clean cut. I reached toward the desk, not quite touching the folders. Can I see them? All of it? He studied me for a long beat. Why? Because if I'm going to lose you, I want to understand exactly how I did it. Not the vague guilt version in my head. The real one. Surprise flickered across his face, the first crack in the calm mask all evening. After a moment, he slid the timeline folder toward me. Start here. It's chronological. No redactions. I opened it with trembling fingers. The first page was a calendar printout from 8 months ago. A circled Tuesday, with my handwritten note in the margin, dentist apt, back late. Below it, a screenshot of my location pinging at a boutique hotel 20 miles away. Next page, my text to Jasper the same night. He thinks I'm at the dentist. Don't text until after 10. Page after page, the evidence stacked like bricks in a wall I'd helped build. Each one hurt differently, some sharp with shame, others dull with the slow realization that I'd been rewriting our story without him knowing the new chapters. When I reached the last page, a recent photo of Jasper and me at a sidewalk cafe, time-stamped 3 weeks ago. I closed the folder and pressed my palms to my eyes. I didn't think it would look this deliberate, I whispered. It always does from the outside, Caleb said quietly. That's why people keep secrets. The view from inside is softer, fogged glass. From out here, it's plate glass. I lowered my hands. Tears streaked my cheeks. I didn't wipe them away. I don't know how to fix this. You don't fix it tonight. He stood finally, stretching as though the conversation had been physically exhausting. You start by not lying again. Not even small ones. Not even to yourself. He walked past me toward the door, pausing only to add, "Guest room is made up. I'll leave your charger on the dresser. We talk again tomorrow, after you've read the rest." The door clicked shut behind him. I stayed at the desk until the printer went to sleep and the street lamp outside dimmed to a faint amber glow. The folders waited, patient and merciless. 30 days, he'd said earlier. 30 days to decide. I had the feeling the clock had already started ticking long before tonight. I stepped closer to the desk. What exactly do you think this archive is going to accomplish? You going to mail it to my mother? Post it on Facebook? Take it to a lawyer? He slid a fresh sheet into a clear protector sleeve, movements deliberate. I haven't decided yet. That's the point of preparation. Options stay open until they don't. A laugh escaped me, sharp, ugly. You sound like a prosecutor. Maybe I am one now. He capped the pen he'd been using to annotate dates. Funny how betrayal turns people into things they never thought they'd be. I wanted to scream that he was overreacting, that affairs happened, that marriages survived worse. But the words felt cheap even in my head. Instead, I asked the question I'd been avoiding since the car. Do you hate me? He considered it, really considered it. I did, for a while. Then I just felt empty, like someone had hollowed out the place where I used to keep the version of us I believed in. He tapped the USB drive against his palm. Hate takes energy. I'm conserving mine. I reached for one of the printouts, Jasper's message from last August. Can't stop thinking about your laugh in the hotel bar. My own reply beneath it, then don't. My stomach twisted. Not from guilt, exactly. From the sudden, sickening recognition that someone else had witnessed every private betrayal in crisp 12-point font. You printed everything, I whispered. Twice. One set stays here. One's already in a safe deposit box. Digital copies are in 3 different encrypted clouds with dead man switches. If anything happens to me, certain people get everything automatically. The casual way he said it, dead man switches, made the hair rise on my arms. You think I'd hurt you? I think people do unpredictable things when they're cornered. He met my gaze again, softer this time. I don't think you'd hurt me on purpose, but I also didn't think you'd lie to my face for 7 months. So I'm adjusting my assumptions. I sank into the chair across from him, knees weak. What do you want, Caleb? Divorce? Revenge? A public shaming? Just tell me so I can stop guessing. He leaned back, chair creaking. I want the truth from you, not excuses, not deflections, the real, ugly truth. And then I want to decide, without your tears or promises or sudden affection, what happens to the rest of our lives. I opened my mouth, closed it. The truth was a many-headed thing. Jasper had been exciting, attentive, dangerous in the way forbidden things are. Caleb had become background noise, reliable, kind, invisible. I'd told myself the affair didn't mean I didn't love him, it just meant I needed something more. But saying that out loud now felt like trying to explain arson by complaining about the cold. I never wanted to hurt you, I started. He held up a hand. That's still an excuse. Try again. I swallowed. I was bored, lonely, flattered. Jasper saw me, the way I used to feel seen when we first met. You stopped looking at me like that. I stopped looking because you stopped being here, he said quietly. You were physically present, sure. But you checked out long before the first hotel receipt. Silence stretched again, taut as wire. Finally, I asked, Are you going to leave me? I don't know yet. He closed the top folder with a soft snap. I'm giving myself 30 days. No contact with Jasper, verifiable. Full transparency on your phone, email, location, whatever I ask for. You answer every question honestly, no matter how humiliating. In 30 days, I'll decide if there's anything left worth salvaging, or if I just want out with the cleanest possible exit. And if I say no? He shrugged, almost gentle. Then I stop preparing quietly and start preparing loudly. Lawyers, mediator, public filings if it comes to that. Your choice. I stared at the neat stack of evidence, at the man who had once cried when our dog died and now spoke about divorce like a project timeline. Something inside me cracked. Not dramatically, just a hairline fracture running through every certainty I'd clung to. I'll do it, I said. The 30 days, all of it. He nodded once. Good. We start tomorrow. Tonight you sleep in the guest room. I need space to breathe. I stood, legs unsteady. At the doorway, I paused. Caleb, I'm sorry. He didn't look up from the desk. I know you are. That's why I'm still sitting here instead of calling a locksmith. I closed the door behind me. The hallway felt endless. Somewhere downstairs, the refrigerator hummed, indifferent. 30 days. 30 days to prove I could be honest, or 30 days for him to build an airtight escape pod. Either way, the marriage we'd had was already dead. What came next would be something else entirely, something forged in silence, evidence, and the slow, surgical work of deciding whether love could be rebuilt from ashes or whether it was better to let the wind take them. I didn't know which outcome scared me more. The next week passed in a strange, cold détente. Caleb continued sleeping in the guest room and spending his evenings in his study with his folders and files. I continued going to work, where the tension had eased somewhat after I'd taken down the Instagram post, though I could still feel people watching me. I should have been more careful. I should have recognized that Caleb was building toward something. But instead, I convinced myself that his documentation was just his way of processing the situation, and that eventually he'd realize he was overreacting and things would go back to normal. That's why I made the mistake I made on Thursday night. I'd gone to the Blue Moon after work, ostensibly to grab dinner at the bar since Caleb was working late on lesson plans. Jasper was working, and we fell into our usual easy conversation. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in weeks. He made me feel desirable and interesting and alive. When his shift ended at 10, it seemed natural to go back to his apartment for a nightcap. It seemed natural to stay until after midnight. And when he suggested we take a selfie to commemorate surviving all the drama, it seemed natural to agree. The photo showed us on his couch, my head on his shoulder, both of us looking relaxed and happy. Without thinking too hard about it, I posted it to Instagram with the caption, "When loyalty is boring, humor helps. Real friends stick around through the chaos. Hashtag authenticity, hashtag real friends, hashtag no regrets." I thought I was being clever, making a statement about friendship and loyalty without explicitly acknowledging the affair. I thought I was showing everyone that I wasn't going to be shamed or controlled. I was an idiot. The post got immediate attention, but not the kind I'd expected. Instead of support from friends who understood that marriage was complicated, I got a flood of comments from people who saw it as a blatant slap in the face to my husband. This is disgusting. Poor Caleb. Have you no shame? Your husband deserves better. I deleted the negative comments and blocked the users, but they kept coming. By the time I got home around 1 in the morning, my phone was buzzing constantly with notifications. The house was dark when I walked in, but I could see light coming from under Caleb's study door. I found him at his computer, and I could see my Instagram post on his screen. He was taking screenshots, saving them to his ever-growing digital archive. Really, Cal, you're screenshotting my social media now? I screenshot everything, he said without looking up. Every post, every comment, every interaction. It's all documented. That's seriously creepy behavior. Is it, or is it just thorough? I looked over his shoulder at the computer screen and saw something that made my blood run cold. He'd created a shared Google Drive folder labeled Archive Final, and it contained hundreds of files, screenshots of my social media posts, printed emails, photos, even what looked like a timeline documenting my relationship with Jasper. What is this for? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I knew. Insurance, he said simply. Insurance against what? Against you trying to rewrite history, against you claiming this never happened, or that I'm making it up, or that I'm the one who destroyed our marriage. The methodical, clinical way he said it sent a chill through me. This wasn't emotional anymore. This wasn't about hurt feelings or wounded pride. This was something else entirely. You can't just document someone's life without their permission. That's stalking. It's not stalking when it's your spouse, and the information is publicly available, he said. I checked. You checked? With who? With a lawyer. The word hit me like a physical blow. A lawyer? Did you think I was just going to keep detailed records for fun, Ivadne? Did you think this was a hobby? I stared at him, finally understanding what I was looking at. The folders, the documentation, the calm detachment. It wasn't processing or coping. It was preparation for divorce. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Over one stupid kiss? Over a friendship that got a little out of hand? He turned in his chair to face me fully, and his expression was completely calm. Is that really what you think this is about? One kiss? That's all it was. What about the weekend trip you lied about? What about the months of secret meetings? What about the fact that you just spent 4 hours at his apartment and then posted about how loyalty is boring? Each question hit like a slap. He knew. He knew everything, and he'd been documenting it all. People make mistakes, Caleb. People have moments of weakness. That doesn't mean you throw away 8 years of marriage. You're right, he said. People do make mistakes. But you didn't make a mistake, Ivadne. You made a choice. You made dozens of choices, over and over again, for months. And then when you got caught, you made the choice to double down instead of taking responsibility. So what? You're going to divorce me? Ruin both our lives over this? I'm going to protect myself, he said. Legally, financially, and emotionally. That's what the documentation is for. I wanted to argue, to fight, to make him see reason. But looking at the organized files, the methodical preparation, the complete transformation of my quiet, passive husband into someone I didn't recognize, I realized that this conversation was just another piece of evidence he was collecting. Fine, I said. If that's what you want, fine. But don't expect me to just roll over and let you destroy me. I don't expect anything from you anymore, he said, turning back to his computer. That's the point. I left him there with his files and his plans, and went to bed alone for what I somehow knew would be one of the last times in our house. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the doorbell ringing insistently. Caleb was already gone, probably for another of his early morning runs that had become longer and more frequent over the past week. I stumbled to the door in my robe, expecting to see a delivery driver, or maybe one of our neighbors. Instead, I found a professional-looking woman in a business suit, holding an official-looking envelope. "Ivadne Hartley." "Yes?" "You've been served." She handed me the envelope and walked away, leaving me standing in my doorway in my bathrobe, holding divorce papers and a USB drive labeled Evidence Archive AB. Inside the envelope was everything: a petition for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and adultery, a detailed financial disclosure, a proposed division of assets, and a witness list that included his entire family, several of our mutual friends, and even my boss at Patterson and Associates. But it was the evidence packet that really took my breath away. Caleb had documented everything: every lie, every secret meeting, every social media post, every contradiction in my stories. It was all there, organized chronologically and cross-referenced, painting a picture of systematic deception that I couldn't deny or explain away. I was still standing there, reading through the papers in shock, when I saw Caleb across the street. He was leaning against his car, having apparently just returned from his run. He wasn't gloating or angry or emotional. He was just watching, calm and composed, as his carefully laid plans came to fruition. Our eyes met across the distance, and for a moment I thought about running to him, about begging him to reconsider, about promising to change and be better and end things with Jasper. But then I remembered the look in his eyes over the past few weeks, that distant, calculating look of someone who had already moved on. I remembered the methodical way he'd prepared for this moment, the legal precision of his documentation, the complete transformation from the passive man I'd married into someone who would protect himself at all costs. I had pushed him too far, manipulated him once too often, and underestimated him completely. Now I was standing alone in my doorway, holding the evidence of my own destruction, while my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, stood across the street like a general surveying a battlefield he'd already won. The papers in my hand contained everything I'd thought I could hide, every lie I'd thought I could maintain, every justification I'd thought would protect me. Caleb had been 3 steps ahead of me the entire time, building his case while I'd been building my delusions. As I watched, he got in his car and drove away, leaving me alone with the consequences of choices I'd convinced myself were harmless. The documentation was complete, the evidence was overwhelming, and my marriage was over. I had played a game I didn't even know I was playing, against an opponent I'd completely underestimated, and I had lost everything.